Welcome to Statutes and Stethoscopes, where million-dollar verdicts are won or lost on medical evidence and where the chart never lies. We take you inside the high-stakes world where medicine meets justice. From forensic pathologists who read death like a story, to trial attorneys who turn complex medical records into courtroom victories. These are the voices that matter when everything is on the line. Discover how expert witnesses survive cross-examination, uncover red flags in nursing home records, and learn why the right medical insight can change everything. This is Justice in Action, where every case could be someone's last chance for truth. Here's your host, Tracy Liberatore.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Statutes and Stethoscopes. Today's guest brings more than 35 years of experience in the trial and settlement of major personal injury cases, helping victims and their families find justice and healing. As a founding partner of McDonald and McGregor LLC in Scranton, Pennsylvania, he secured numerous seven-figure verdicts and settlements, including record-setting results in medical negligence cases. Among them, a $7.4 million and $7 million for birth trauma, $6.5 million for anesthesia error, and a $5.4 million in wrongful death case that remains the highest med mal verdict in Monroe County. But beyond the courtroom, he's a devoted family man, married to his high school sweetheart, Ann, for 36 years. They raised 4 remarkable children in North Abington Township, one who became a lawyer, one who's become a doctor, and 2 following their own passions in immigration and art. You're about to meet a legal force with a heart, Malcolm McGregor.
Thank you.
Welcome, Mal, to the show.
Yeah, it's great to be.
So today, we're diving into the life of a trial lawyer and peeling back the curtain on what really happens behind the scenes. The wins, the losses, the family life, and the emotional weight that ties it all together. Our guest opens up about how everyday moments shape his courtroom strategy, the personal path that drew him to the law, and the unique strengths his firm brings to the fight for justice. And for those of you in the medical world or the legal trenches, stay with us. He's also going to share exactly what he looks for in a medical expert and why the right voice on the stand can tip the scales in almost any case. Okay, Mal. What can you tell us about life as a trial lawyer, the good, the bad, and the ugly?
Well, I think people have a lot of perceptions about trial lawyers. I think every one of them is just a badass and, harsh people to deal with. But in reality, it's really one of the most interesting groups of people I've ever met. They all come from varied backgrounds, men and women who, are really committed to helping, as my mother would say, the little guy. People who are, kind of down on their luck or have had something terrible. When people come to us, it's usually one of the lowest moments of their life. It takes a lot of guts and courage to come to a lawyer. Most of them have never even dealt with a lawyer before, but now their life's been turned upside down and they need help. I think a lot of our work, in addition to having all the legal expertise that you need and experience and work ethic, is being willing to listen, identify the problems and ways that you can help people and be honest with them when you can. So I found it to be an amazingly rewarding career. It's taught me so much about so many different things, but the people I've met in have been the best part of it. That's for sure.
No, I think you're absolutely right. I hear a lot of lawyer jokes. They always tend to make fun of lawyers in general, and that's always my retort that I come back with as well. When you're in the worst position of your life, who are you going to call?
Yeah.
Right? That's right.
Every lawyer is a bastard till you need one.
That's right.
But really, it's amazing how people have been so kind, when we've obtained a favorable outcome, or just, these cases, particularly the ones involving medical malpractice or medical negligence, they're not over easy, and you live with, or quickly, and you live with the case and you come to really know that you're doing your job right. The client's family and you become close, their stories, their highs, their lows, what to do to put their life back on track. So it's amazing the bond you develop with the people. It's a people business more than that, that's for sure.
Oh, truly is. So you have your family life. You've got your clients as your family. You've got other trial lawyers, I believe. It's
Sure.
almost like a family, a brotherhood as well.
Sure.
How you share strategies and try to help one another out.
Yeah, trial lawyers are great sharers, Tracy. I think a lot of people don't have that in their mind, but like here in Northeastern Pennsylvania, for instance, if I picked up the phone or sent out an email and said, "Hey, I have an issue regarding how to access medical records from a certain facility. Has anyone had this or had a motion?" Boom, 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 boom. I'll get phone calls, emails. Here's what I have here. They're all sharers. We all compete in many ways for business, but if someone needs help, the Northeastern, you won't find a better trial or bar than here in Northeastern Pennsylvania and in Pennsylvania. So the Pennsylvania Association for Justice, two great organizations that really bond together men and women on the side of justice.
Absolutely. Very, very supportive, to be
Yeah.
sure. So you had an interesting thing that you told me about your work stories, right? We were talking. So can you share some of that with our audience?
Sure. I was a young dad. We have 4 children. I was a pretty young dad when I started out in this business. And of course, like many parents, you feel guilt when you're away from your kids for long periods. And, it's not like it happened every day, but there were periods where we had trials where we'd have to go stay in Bradford County or stay in Monroe County for 2.5, 3 weeks, come home on the weekend. And, thankfully, I was married to an incredible woman. My wife was great to manage and do all that. But I would always want my kids to know that if I wasn't with them, I was doing something important that was meaningful and that I was trying to help others, saw that, heard that, even at an early age, that would hopefully make an impression on them. So I started telling them work stories and, they got very curious about them. They'd say, "What are you doing? We missed you. Where were you?" And I'd say, "Well, I'm going to tell you a work story where I was." And I would tell in, probably the parlance of about a 3rd to 4th grader, maybe, because my kids were little then, what I was doing. And I dumb it down and it was amazing that they would find it fascinating. They would ask, "Tell me a work story. Tell me a work story." And you would also, you think all the best advice comes from all the brilliant people and the trialers. I would get ideas from them because if I could explain the need for a woman with breast cancer to have a biopsy and that it was a simple test where you stuck a needle in to my 2nd and 4th graders and they could understand it, then I'm pretty sure that a jury would understand it. So one time I had the experience where that case you talked about, beautiful woman, Maureen Thiel, we got that record verdict in Monroe County of $5.4 million when I was with my former firm. I was talking to him about the case and what was involved, stuff like that. And they had heard a little bit of it. A small child could understand something that's supposed to be so complex as a biopsy. Then I needed to make it that simple for the jurors. So work stories were my way of connecting with my kids, probably lessening my guilt. But it also was a two-way street. They'll still to this day, and I'd only use the first person's name. They'd say, "Tell me the work story about Maureen. Tell me the work story about Tom." So it was a great thing, and it was mutually beneficial. And to this day, they still remember.
I bet they do. They make for interesting bedtime stories for sure.
Yeah.
Right? You think any of that is kind of what fostered the interest in either the law or medicine in those two?
I think my kids were always curious. We always say that we raised free range chicken, and everybody's parenting style is different, whether you're an attorney or whatever you do. And our kids kind of followed their thing, and we just tried to set the best example by doing what we did. But we always wanted them to know that whatever we were trying to do, we were trying to help. And that even when we were bringing cases, I wouldn't say, "Oh, doctor's bad," or I'd say, they made a mistake. They work hard and they try to help people. But sometimes if it doesn't happen that way, then the person who's been hurt needs help. So I think I can't necessarily say that drove them to it, but I think all of my kids are very aware and of the need to serve and help others. And I do think that definitely came from both my wife and myself and seeing my work or hearing about it or seeing, what she would do in the community. And I think they did get that. My oldest, who is in the process of becoming a lawyer, sitting for the bar, I do think that she saw that the law was a way to solve problems. After pursuing a PhD and doing some other things, she came to the conclusion, said, "Hey, that's the way. I've seen that before. And I know the law can solve problems." That made me happy.
Yeah, absolutely. Always great. Now, is she going to stay in Pennsylvania or is she in a different state?
No, she's in California and she's been out there for 10 years. Yeah.
Another California bar examinee. I had to sit for that one.
Yeah.
That was not.
That's tough. So
Yeah.
other than that, now I have my second child is an artist in Philadelphia. My third is in dental school to obtain that degree. So now I have free consults from someone with dental knowledge. And my littlest one is not little anymore, is going off to graduate school in London to study migration and immigration. So very interesting that they all, whether it's, medicine, law, the arts, or immigration, migration, they're all in kind of service areas where they can help other people, share their talents with other people. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Sounds like 4 amazing careers.
Hi.
So what about you? What got you into law to begin with? Where did you get started?
So it's kind of funny. I didn't have there's no lawyers in my family. I came from times lower middle class, upper middle class, just depended. I was fourth of 6 children. So I was a scrapper in the middle. And, I think I did unconsciously, when I look back, there were some incredible people who were examples for me. My next door neighbor, Jim Haggerty, was a lawyer in our community in Scranton. And I just remember that he was, really well respected and served in Governor Casey's administration and helped people when our neighbor had died in a car crash involving an accelerator that stuck. Mr. Haggerty represented him, and I knew that. I knew he was helping him. Judge John Catone, one of the finest judges ever to walk the earth, sit on the bench in Lackawanna County, was my neighbor. He lived across the street, just quiet. He was a former U.S. attorney. Quiet dignity. Mr. Tom, Attorney Tom Hanlon did criminal defense. So they were around me, and I don't think I was asking about the law, but I think that influence was there. And then, I guess I'd say 2 things, one personal and one, I guess I'll call it academic. The academic one was I was told, shout out to Dr. Frank Homer for telling me not to bother to go to law school. Once you told me that, then I knew I was going to go. That's the type of inspiration you need. But my family had the misfortune of losing my sister, Tara, who was only 21 years old, from a medical complication. It didn't involve malpractice, but I was 19, and it created a very powerful understanding of how quickly life can change, and also empathy, because I saw the terrible loss my parents, siblings had suffered. So I think particularly in wrongful death cases, for the worst reason, my sister's passing, it's, I think, very tuned to wrongful death cases and the way we handle that, the way we treat the clients, the way we respect that. I also had a cousin who was my age. He went in for the hernia operation in the Harrisburg area, and the doctor killed him. He wasn't even 3 years old. The doctor decided he was going to take his appendix out. He nicked him. And back then, in the 60s, there was charitable immunity for hospitals. There were all these laws that didn't allow you to get justice. So I had always heard this story in my family about my cousin Jared and how he, really, really lost his life as a result of gross malpractice. And there was never any closure. So that was bubbling in the back of my mind. So I think a combination of some personal things, some influences I was lucky enough to have, led me to the law.
Okay, very interesting. So there's so many different aspects of law that you could practice. Why medical malpractice, personal injury type cases?
I had the good fortune of clerking with Thomas J. Foley Jr. Associate. And Tom Foley was a mentor of mine who I clerked with and liked that work. I liked working on behalf of victims of injury. My mother would kill me if I wasn't for the little guy. I could never. If there were any corporations, she'd come down to my office and beat me. Because my grandfather was a coal miner and he was fighting for everything he could. So I was always for the little guy or the underdogs. My mother would always say, be for the underdog, be for the little guy. And my former firm was like that. And then when I was there, we helped people with workers' comp. People were injured on the job. People were injured in truck, busing, car accidents. We helped all that. But I could see that like the real action, the real battles, the real high level flying and fighting was in the area of medical malpractice. The medicine was very complex. Doctors are very smart. The experts are very smart. You needed it for people to help you. I had a great nurse, Marsha Korniansky. Shout out to Marsha. It was unbelievable who worked with me. And the other thing is that people in those cases were usually hurt very, very badly. So we felt like you were really kind of on the right side of things, and you're always learning stuff. It's really fascinating. There's all these medical terms, conditions, and treatment plans and everything. So yeah, I certainly help people in a variety of the day in auto and trucking, but medical malpractice definitely became my niche, and certainly here at McDonald and McGregor, that's what I'm most known for, receive most referrals for, have results for.
So when you are presented with a case, is there certain things in the case that you look for, or what helps you decide whether or not you're going to take a case?
Yeah, I just had a case this morning, Tracy, that someone called. It's actually statistically reported that fewer than 20% of all malpractice ever gets to a lawyer. There's 80% that's floating out there that people just don't either know or aren't aware, and they never bring it, which is, kind of sad for sure.
Yeah.
But of that 20%, I was just on a call this morning, and this was a person who was a victim of malpractice. It was substandard care involving the diagnosis and treatment of a urethral infection. And there was also the manner in which the person was catheterized was improper, and they went into the urethra instead of the bladder. But thankfully for this gentleman, although he endured a good amount of pain, he's fine now. And the way that the insurance industry and the legislature has set up the playing field in medical malpractice, sadly, I have to turn away more than 80% of the cases, even ones where there's clear malpractice, because unless the damages, the harms, the injuries are more on the catastrophic side involving death, brain injury, paralysis, amputation, permanent loss of ability to do the things that you and I do at home, inability to, we have to invest upwards of $100,000 in these cases because the experts are expensive, taking depositions, all those things. So when we're weighing those cases, as you're asking, we're looking and saying, okay, is there fault or negligence in this case, or treatment that fell below the standard? We need an expert for that. And I know we'll talk about that. We were doing that before it was required to have a certificate of merit. We would never take on a case without a board certified expert saying, yeah, that's malpractice. So, you certainly need that, but you also need to be in a position where you can say to the person, hey, I can either compel an insurance company to pay a significant settlement in that case, or I can obtain a jury verdict or an arbitration verdict. And if I can't give you that assurance that I'm going to put you and your family through 4 or 5 years of stress, anxiety, more pain when you've already been hurt. So we don't want that. So we have to be really, really selective in these cases. But when, we go all in. And when you have all those elements, the negligence, the causation causing injuries and significant damages and losses, that's when you have a powerful case.
Yeah, absolutely. You've had some pretty significant wins. Is there any secrets or tips to these bigger wins, or is it just,
To be honest, I'm really lucky because we have an amazing staff here. It takes a lot. Those cases are never won by one person. My partner, Terry Yellen Jr., is great. And he gives me great support on these cases, whether it's legally or just helping me to work the case up. The people like my assistant, June, has been with me for over 35 years. Wendy's has been here, I think it's over 30 years now. My nephew, over 20 years. Like, these are people who understand and know how we work up cases and how we do that. It involves a lot of selecting really good experts, but it also involves nursing. You have 2 nurses that work with us that are terrific, that help us review records and prepare for depositions. And I think a lot of these cases truly are won and lost in deposition. And to me, we take that like a mini trial. And I think there are some advantages to being smaller. There's certainly a lot bigger firms, but with us, it's kind of David versus Goliath, and
Mhm.
David can be nimble. David can adjust, whereas Goliath is going to do the same robotic thing almost every time out. In some of these big firms, it's the same thing. They wallpaper you with the discovery, or they raise these objections, and they, same approach to the deposition. Well, that, at some point, it's pretty straightforward to catch on to that and know where they're going to go and be able to do that. But at the end of the day, honestly, Tracy, the most important thing with those cases were the people we brought them for, the families we brought them for. They had really powerful stories to tell. We mentioned Maureen Thiel. That was a woman who had a lump in her breast and went to her doctor and was told, hey, don't call us, we'll call you. And she left behind 2 boys. Those stories are the ones, and they never cease to amaze you with how powerful they are. There's always something more if you keep talking to them that they end up sharing. We just last summer, we represented a woman who ended up being an amputee after a fall off a horse. That shouldn't have happened. And just the power to hear the impact on her lives and her family's lives and how that had changed. I'm like, who would sign up for that? Of course, the answer, nobody. So it's the people and their stories that we have the privilege to tell. And then you have to work hard to tell them. I mean, it's not, you have to put together all the tools, but boy, circling back to work stories, right? When you have the right story and the power of the story, and not everybody, that's one thing I think we do well. We know how to pick the right story, and we know how to put the resources behind it to bring that case home and make that story a reality.
And that's going to segue into my next question. What do you feel your firm does really well? And maybe you answered that, or maybe you have something to add to it.
I could expand a little. I talked a lot about it, but I do think that we have great empathy, and that's important. There's a big difference between sympathy and empathy. Empathy is reasoned concern. It means that you understand the seriousness of the situation and you want to help to make it right. And I think everybody, when we came over, and started our law firm on December 8th of 2011, after, being in a different place, I wanted our whole approach from the first time you called us to the end of the case to be empathetic, to let people know that you were our number one priority and that we were there for you. You aren't just a file over here or a number. And so when anybody watching this podcast calls my office, they're going to hear someone say, thank you for calling McDonald and McGregor. This is Isabel. How may I help you? Nobody here is going to say law office. They're going to know right away that they've called somewhere where they can get help. People will listen, that they'll try to understand. I think that's really important. The thing that makes us good is the people that I work with are really good at what they do. Just like I do and everyone else. They deserve your very best effort. And when you come here, everybody here takes it to the nth degree, and they'll do anything. They're not the type of people who are like, well, it's 4:00, I got to go. If they have to finish something to make sure that case is on its way, they're going to do it.
Yeah.
I think that's the part. We're grinders. We will grind you down.
I imagine your return phone calls too. It is another complaint I hear a lot, is like, I can't get my lawyer to call me back ever. I don't know what's happening with my case. So,
well, what's funny about that? I will admit this right on the podcast. It's hard sometimes. You do have to triage the calls a little bit. And I'm honest, for people who are watching, there's times when we may be preparing for a major mediation. I have to give that client it's their day. So I have to backlog a few calls. It's not because I don't want to talk to you. It's not because I don't think your case is important. Because at that moment in time, it's another client's moment for me to give my all. And what I've found is that people, if you're honest with them and tell them that, they're incredibly understanding. They'll say, listen, I know how busy you are, Attorney McGregor. I just want to check in and make sure I understood. And as long as you let them know that, people text me on my phone. They'll text for updates, people email. A lot less people come into the office and call lots of texts.
technology certainly has changed the way we do business, for sure. All right. Well, let's segue here to our experts. So seeing how your cases intersect with medicine, what's the most important thing that you think when you're hiring a medical expert? What do you look for?
I think everybody knows in Pennsylvania, we have to have, under the statute, we have to have a board certified expert with appropriate qualifications under what they call the MCARE Act to sign an affidavit of merit for a case. If we don't have that, then we can't proceed with the case. So when I'm looking for an expert, of course, we want to have someone who has finest qualifications, but also a level of experience in dealing with the types of conditions and issues that are present in our case. And what you'll find is there's a lot of people who have very good qualification. It's also that fit for what I talked about before, about our David versus Goliath, about our empathetic approach. I don't need the smartest expert in the world who's going to be rude in a deposition or talk down to a jury. I need people who have experience in life, that they've actually treated these conditions, or they've taught about them, or trained other people about them. So they're conversant and happy. A good expert likes a little combat. I do not hire experts who don't want to testify at trial. In the beginning, when I hire them, I say, look, you can assume that this case is going to end up in front of 12 people. It may or may not, but you have to be prepared to approach it that way and treat it that way and be willing to do it right down to the end. Because, I've had the experience where you had, someone who you thought was a terrific expert. And then as the case was getting closer to trial, well, I'm really not sure I want to say that from the stand. Well, why would you put that in a report? Or discuss this for me for a number of years and then say, now, I'm not sure about it. So it's really important that the expert is on the same page in terms of just being candid and being willing to stand up for the case. I have no problem. And believe me, it saves me a lot of money when a good, well-qualified expert says, you don't have a case, and here's why, and explains it. I don't want to bring a case that shouldn't be prosecuted. It's going to not end well for me, or more importantly, for the client. So when someone tells me and has reviewed a case and says, I don't believe this is the case, I'll probe it, understand it, and then be thankful for it. But, I think you need experts who are candid like that. But you can tell pretty quickly, too, what kind of experts are doing the work, reading the records, how prepared they are for the call, all sorts of things. I wouldn't ask any expert to work any harder than I would. But if I'm hiring you and I'm working hard on the case and I'm paying you retainer, then I expect you to work just as hard. Thankfully, through yourself and other really capable business partners, I've been fortunate to have access, and just through people I've met. I've had people who treated family members who I said, I think you're really impressive. Would you ever be interested in reviewing a case? And they'll say, yeah, I would, because I saw them interact one-to-one. I saw not only their knowledge, but I saw the way they carried themselves. Some of them are the best experts going.
Oh, absolutely. It's interesting. I do the same thing. I go into a doctor's office. If I think my doctor is good, I'm like, hey, have you ever considered working as a medical expert?
No.
Yeah.
And you'd be surprised how many, a lot of times, some of them have done it. Some of them are very interested in doing it, but they just haven't had a chance to do it yet. Now, and you also have to watch. You never want to end up in a scenario. I know the defense likes to paint it that way, but I'm not calling the same doctor in every case and saying, oh, doctor, we need this from you. That's ridiculous, because it's not going to work. If you have a good expert in a particular area who's really strong, wonderful. But not like as a lawyer representing victims of injury, you're going to roll in with the same 3 experts in every case. You need new people with different perspective, different qualifications, a willingness to back up what they say, not to step away from.
No, absolutely. And I think, like you said earlier, defense probably doesn't know how many cases maybe that expert has turned down and told you that you couldn't go forward with it, right? Because those don't go on record. But I think that's a big point too for experts, especially when I take on a new expert. It's one of the things that I try to explain to them early on. It's like, you're not trying to advocate for this case. You're trying to come forth with a non-biased opinion. They want to know what's in the record. If there's not a case, don't create one, because it's going to come up later and you're going to spend all this money trying to chase a case that just isn't there. So I think that was a great point.
It's so true. And I'm telling you, I'll leave you with this example on experts. And because I think you doing this type of work, like, it's really important that you get feedback. If I have an expert and I don't have a good experience, like I had an expert who's big hot shot, great credentials, one of the leading, institution, country, teaching, the whole 9 yards. But, the more we talked about the case, the more it was backing away, to the point where I said, these opinions were ones that you offered in this case from the outset, and you authored a report, and you're not prepared to back them up, then I'm not going to use you. And I didn't, and I got another expert. But then after the fact, I actually let her know that we had a significant recovery in the case. And part of it was in areas where she told me essentially there was no case, so that she couldn't do it. And I said, doctor, I'm not trying to rub your nose in it, but I want you to know, like, these were issues that were very serious that I was quite confident were going to lead to a significant recovery. And you battled me on that. And I want you to know that I don't say this for any type of aha moment or anything, but I want you to know that when I make that assessment and you get up and then back away, I know what I'm doing. And I wanted you to be aware of this. Accepted some of it, not others, but I think it's important to give feedback, I guess I'm saying, to expert and
Absolutely.
people who provide them.
That's absolutely one of the biggest things I see when I take on a new person that's new to this is all the wishy-washy language in the reports. Like, they're afraid to state a solid opinion. Like, the more likely than not, it's always like, well, maybe this could have happened, but that's not what you're looking for. We need an opinion. So I think that's almost from an expert that's just not sure how to be an expert yet. Almost a symptom of that. Take a little bit of training.
You're absolutely right. The really good experts, they know the medicine, they know everything. They have a good sense of it. And the really good ones know, to go where certainly the medicine, their experience leads them, but not to go overboard. They know that.
Stay within your lines, stay within your bounds, know what you're talking about, have a strong opinion. I mean, those are all very important points. Yeah.
I don't need a hero. I just need someone, I don't, believe me, more cases have been lost with, problems that have happened with experts than will ever happen with the client. So it's an area that's fraught with, danger. You have to be.
That was another great point. And some, yeah, for sure. So, all right. Well, this was all really, really great information. I'd like to talk a little bit about you growing up. I know you said you came from a family of non-lawyers. First one to go to college. Sounds like we have similar backgrounds. So,
yeah. Worth of 6. So I was a middle grinder. Their man, and she's another powerhouse. She's an attorney. Funny, we both ended up. She's an attorney and does appellate work. Just interesting how we came there. We grew up in a little section of Scranton. Anybody watching this? Shout out to Greenridge. We grew up there. Greenridge Junior Basketball, St. Paul's Crusaders, St. Clair's, all that. I went to all the little Catholic schools. I'm still best friends with the people I walked off to kindergarten with, holding hands when I was under 5. They're still my buds. And, it was a small, close, fun, great community. And again, I ended up going to Bishop Hammond High School, the Catholic school, the University of Scranton. And these were just, great places. We lived in Greenwich when I was growing up and then moved over into Dunmore. We had a lot of fun growing up. We were always busy, always doing something. And I was very blessed that I had parents who they didn't puff you up, but they made you believe that there was nothing that you couldn't do. And I was really lucky for that, because it took a lot of audacity for me to think that I could be a lawyer when I was muddling along back then. And they put that in, which is really cool. And so, I went to the U, and as I was joking before, I liked writing and I was interested in journalism. And then I kind of had that personal experience with my cousin Jared and my sister who died when I was in college. And I thought, I really want to do something that if I wanted to be my own boss, wanted to do stuff for someone, I could do it. And the law came to me. And of course, then I was told, no, you can't do that. And that's all you have to tell me. I basketball growing up, and all they had to tell me is you're not good enough. And then I'd work, be out there, be doing the things that need to be done. So yeah, it was a fantastic place to grow up. And I went to Catholic University of America School of Law, and many of our areas in Scranton, Judge Nealon, Judge Conover, both, and Judge Catone went to Catholic. So there was a nice kind of little pipeline between Scranton and Catholic. I had a great childhood, and I was really blessed. As my mother says, there but for the grace of God go I, because there were definitely a number of times in elementary, high school, and college that I probably shouldn't have made it, but I did. And here I am. It's made me tougher, better.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Now, when we were on our other call, the original prep call, we talked a little bit about the interesting story, and I don't know if you want to share this, of, how you met your wife and that whole scenario. Is that something you'd be willing to talk about real quick before we end?
It's the part of growing up in Greenwich was that a lot of my friends were wonderful. I basically saw, I'll say, one type of girl that had a Dorothy Hamill haircut. It was the 70s and wore black and white saddles and high socks. They were wonderful, great friends of mine and everything like that. And then my cousin, in sophomore year of high school, befriended a girl named Aunt MacArthur and brought her down to my house. And I saw her for the first time, and I had never seen redhead with red freckles on their lips and brown eyes. And that was like a boom. That was definitely an eye opener. So the only problem was she struck me so hard that I couldn't speak well. Thank God I've gotten over that. I couldn't get up the gumption to ask her out, and I couldn't figure out. She was like, "You idiot, I can't believe you didn't figure it out." Like, I'd be hitchhiking to go to high school, and she'd drive by with a friend of mine and pick me up. And I'm like, she was in the attic. I'm like, why is she here? And she's like, what do you think I was there for? Missed all the signals. Bad. I missed all the signals. And then what ended up happening is she went to school in Paris, actually, out of high school. She went to the American College of Paris. And I had said to my friends, I said, gosh, blew that. And, just said, if I ever get a chance to ask her out again, I won't blow it. Well, guess what, ladies and gentlemen, I did blow it. And you didn't know, but I got that from my sister and some good friends. So after my sister died, I was very, very low in spirit. And one of my good friends, first grade, John O'Boyle, shout out to Toby, he said, I know that Ann MacArthur is back in town. No, she's in Paris. This was right after my sister died. And she said, no, I saw her last night. I know where she's going to be tonight. You should come. And so I went. And then, of course, I see her. She's there. And I'm thinking like, oh, God, here we go. So, of course, she's thinking this story is going to end with me, of course, running up to her and asking her out. I've been,
yeah, right.
Well, that's not how it happened. Because she walked by and said hello. And I think I could barely talk again, starstruck. And she walks by. And then when she walked by, I said to Michael Hamlin, I walked to kindergarten with him. And my friend Kathleen says to Ann, hey, guess what? She says, what? Says, Malcolm wants to ask you out. Why doesn't he? And she thought she was going to say, I was going to marry this girl I dated in high school. I'm like, no. And so finally, through the efforts of, I think my sister, spiritually kind of redirecting her back to me when I was low, and the good friend, Kathleen Kenobi, I got lucky. And then that night we stayed up probably till like 5 a.m. just talking, and she's never been out of my sight. We thought kids persist, but don't wait like I did. But you learn. So it makes for a great story now. My kids love her, and my wife and I bicker over who should have made the move or whatever. But it all ended well. We've been together 40 years, married 30.
It's an amazing love story, truly. Given how early you met, and I loved hearing it. So thank you so much for sharing that.
Sure.
The true story behind that, $1 million verdict, right?
Sure. Takes a lot. Takes a lot of things that go into your life that make up the storyteller that becomes the trial lawyer. I've been blessed with a lot of help and a lot of great people in my life.
Absolutely. And you had said, I think at one point too, how your stories had kind of given you even some ideas on how to handle the cases too, right? Your kids.
Yeah, there's no question. I mentioned earlier when my second child barked out of the back seat and said, well, they should have just put the needle in there. I was like, well, if, third grader can get it, then I'm going to think that a jury can get it. So maybe just dumb that down and keep it straightforward, So yeah, it comes, I talk to people. That's one of the things I learned from a great trial lawyer, great Harry Philo from Detroit, one of the greatest trial lawyers ever. And I had the good fortune to go to his seminar for many years. And he emphasized always that the law is never settled and it's never right until it's just for all people. He always had a way about talking to people and wanting to gain information because he felt like trial lawyers should be really well informed. And he'd always be like, talk to the cab drivers, talk to the people, give your coffee. They're the ones out there. They know what's going on. And I've always made a point. My kids would joke about it. Like we'd be in some city or doing something and I'd be asking people and talking about what's going on and what's new here. What do you think of this? And so as trial lawyers, there's so much information out there. There's so many different opinions and thoughts, and it's necessary to be kind of like a repository of all this information, just checking in with people, see what's going on. You learn a lot because you constantly have to reinvent and adjust yourself. It's not what worked for me in the 1990s isn't the same in 2000, isn't the same now, especially after COVID. Very different. So
Yeah, absolutely. Especially after COVID. And I think a lot of that interpersonal stuff gets lost with all the technology too.
yeah, there's no substitute for, just connecting, to listening, to, like we said, empathy. It all circles back to those things. And people have to feel that. You can't fake it. It's either there or it's not.
No, absolutely. So let our audience know if somebody wants to get in touch with you. I'm sure that with this video, we'll have something posted in the area around this video, but
Terrific. Oh, we would be honored if someone has a question regarding a medical malpractice claim. And if you've been hurt at work, if you've been, in a car or trucking a collision and you have questions, we're more than happy to talk to my partner, Terry Allen Jr. or myself. And you can reach out to me directly. How about this? 570-498-3235. It's my cell phone number. Lots of people text me, lots of people phone me. Our office number is 570-209-7062. And you can also email me, mmlaw.com. That's 4 M's in the middle. And our website, it's actually being updated right now. We'd love for you to visit it. I believe its info is still at mmlaw4ms.com, but you can just search McDonald and McGregor LLC in Scranton. We'd be more than happy to talk to you about your case, how we can help, how we can treat you, kind of differently from other people who, by the way, have represented insurance companies and corporations and all that stuff. We don't do that. And there's a reason why. You can't just flip the switch and represent insurance companies for 20 years and then say, ask the lawyer that you go to or talk to and say, have you represented insurance companies and corporations, or have you been for the working man your whole life? I can tell you here, we're always on the side of the little guy.
That's great. Thank you so much again for being on the episode today. So that brings us to the end of another episode, and we will see you on the next one.
All right, great. Thanks for having me.
Statutes and Stethoscopes podcast requires more than a conversation. It takes action, research, and collective wisdom. If today's episode resonated with you, we'd love to hear your insights. Join the conversation and help us shape the future together. We'll be back with more stories, strategies, and real-world solutions that are making a difference for everyone. In the meantime, be sure to subscribe, rate, write a review, and share it with someone you think would benefit from it too. Thanks for listening, and see you on the next episode.